Hello and welcome to my first review back of 2014. Things have been moving at a slower rate than I wanted them to, but nevertheless, I have actually managed to get things set up now. Things should be going okay, and I am ready to sort of get back into the swing of things. Starting off with a 2008 film. I really should remember some of the facts about the films I review. I really should, but nevertheless, this is a review for what I suspect is 2008 film Cloverfield. Okay, so Cloverfield is basically about this guy who was at a party with some of his friends to celebrate his best friend getting a job in Japan. This is his going away party. And at this going away party, something lands in New York City and just starts wrecking stuff everywhere. Buildings are being smashed, the Statue of Liberty is destroyed, all kinds of mayhem start. And it's a found footage film about this guy and some of his friends just trying to get out of New York. And as it develops, we learn that a certain important person of one of these characters is trapped in a building, so when they're trying to escape, they then have to go off and try and rescue this person. Now, in summary, Cloverfield is a decent film. It's a perfectly enjoyable film. I think there are sort of better films of this style out there, of sort of monster invasion, well, not an invasion, but monster lands in city wrecks things. There are better examples of films that follow that genre out there, but Cloverfield is a good film. So let's just run through the things I like about it. Um, excuse me. Okay, so it's a found footage film. Some people are in two minds about found footage. Some think that it's really overused and it's not as effective as it was sort of like 10 years ago. Like, well, not Blair Witch didn't come out 10 years ago, but when it was more effective when it was a less less used sort of medium of storytelling, a found footage film, which is why many people say that the Blair Witch Project is the best one, because that came out in like 1994. Not a lot of films of that style out there at the time. So some people think found footage is overused. Some people think that it's just misused, like some people aren't using it well enough or utilizing its sort of capabilities as a way of telling a story in a film. I think Cloverfield does a really good job of capturing the authenticity of using an actual camera to film things, because with a lot of found footage films, a lot of them look way too pristine. They look like they've been framed and they've been sort of, the actor holding them has been told to look in certain directions and sort of use the camera in a certain way. Cloverfield has a much more authentic feel to it, in that you can see that the actor using it is doing a good job to sort of just try and convey all the anarchy that's going on around him. So rather than say, look at this, look at that, zoom in on this, zoom out, it's very frantic at times, which is a good thing. It's a very well-made film as far as the found footage go. Saying that it's authentic, I can't really use a word like authentic to describe Cloverfield, because essentially it is a film about a monster attacking New York City. So as far as a found footage film goes, it is a well done film. The acting is good into it. You've got some decent performances. The actors do a good job of being scared when you would be scared. I mean, I'd be bloody petrified the whole thing, but there are some sort of times where your characters are like surprisingly calm given everything that's happened. The monster itself that attacks New York City, they do a really good job of sort of not sort of keeping you in the dark about what's attacking, but not showing you so much, is that the shock value of it all is sort of depleted very quickly. It starts off as just seeing the aftermath of this monster's destruction. So cars flipped over, like holes in buildings and such. Occasionally, a camera will glance over and you'll see this thing walking amongst buildings. Then that helps you bring up the tension, and then gradually they show more of it. And because they take the time with showing it, eventually when you do see it, it really does like hit pretty hard. You're like, holy crap, that thing is huge, and it's just smashing everything. So as far as a sort of a scary film goes, because I would consider this I would consider it a horror film. I think a lot of people consider found footage films like this one and monster films like this one not really horror, more like a sci-fi or a fantasy. I would argue that Cloverfield has enough going on in it to warrant it being a horror film. And it is a pretty tense, pretty scary horror film at times, no denying it. So in general, it's got a lot of positives going for it. Unfortunately, there are some negatives I have with Cloverfield. For example, the film itself is very slow to get going. I think it's like a quarter of an hour, maybe even like 20 minutes of the first of the film is just at this party, people talking and interacting, and because the film only focuses on about 4-5 main characters at most, having all these other people there and all this interaction between them, looking back at it, it is a rather pointless thing to have, because other than setting up your main characters, you're not going to see any of these people again. Like you can assume they either get out or they die. Those are the options. Those are two things that are going to happen to them. So it is slow to get started, and the film itself at times is kind of boring. Not in a boring in the sense of you're like, oh come on, I just want stuff to happen, but it sort of takes breaks between the whole camera looking around, frantic mayhem going on, and it puts in these sort of like breaks to just like a breather, just sort of like let's just settle down for a minute and just have a moment with these characters. And that's not bad, but the thing you have with a film like this is that ultimately you can see the outcome of what's going to happen. You can see that you can see that from the very beginning of the film of what happens, because the tape, I won't spoil the ending, but the tape of what happens comes into the possession of the US government. And you can tell, this is one of the title cards that comes up before the film plays. It tells you something that lets you know that something has happened. I won't say what it says, but once you see it, you know what's happened, and thus you're able to figure out what it is that eventually happens to these characters. And that's something, again, this is the same problem you have with the start of the film. Since you know what's ultimately going to happen to these people, having moments in between, just for your characters to just sort of interact briefly with each other. It's not that it's unnecessary, and it does get you caring about the characters anymore, but it's kind of like me telling you everything that's at Disneyland, and then telling you to read the brochure on the trip there. You don't need to do it. Ultimately, nobody knows what's there, so it seems like a pointless exercise, right? But it still kind of goes for it anyway, and that's kind of frustrating at times, because you kind of like, no offense, Matt Reeves, who's the director, no offense, but we don't really need this. I'm much more interested in having an entertaining film where I'm scared, where it's tense, and I'm enjoying myself, than just sort of having this like calm, sort of almost serene moments, you know? And that's just my personal preference, though. So, altogether, Cloverfield is a good film. I do recommend it. Like I said, some people don't like found footage films. In that case, you're not going to like this. But if you're looking for an entertaining film that's scary at times, well done, and is quite tense at times, Cloverfield is a good one to watch. And I think, in summary, as a rating, I would give Cloverfield 3.25 out of 5. I'm going to go kind of specific with this. Again, it was kind of like the Pacific Rim problem, where it was like, do I give it 3 seems too low, but 4 seems too high. But in this case, 3.5 seems a little bit too high. So 3.25. It's a good film, and I do recommend it. So, thank you for watching my review. It's nice to be able to sit down and finally talk about sort of films and review them. I'm back in the chair. It was really awkward setting up the camera so that I was standing. So I've returned to the chair. I've got enough movie stuff behind me to sort of make things look a bit interesting. And, I'm back. Glad to be back. So, thank you for watching my review. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you found it informative. And goodbye.